All right, hello, guys. In today's episode, I interview Rhonda, who is a recent graduate of one of the Summit Strength programs and has also recently come back from a solo adventure on the Overland Track in Tasmania, Australia. Now, in this episode, she shares some insight around her training and preparations leading into this adventure and the challenges she faced with a busy job and a couple of aches and pains. And also, she talks us through her experience on the trail and the different things she overcame, the different challenges she faced, and her general experience on this first major solo adventure. So it's a really valuable episode for anyone who's thinking of their first solo adventure, they're stepping onto the Overland Trail, or who are preparing for an adventure and they do have a few limitations around work or restrictions with COVID. So enough from me, let's get into it. Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. So welcome, Rhonda. Welcome to coming on the show. Very, very excited to have you on board.
Oh, thanks very much, Rowan, for having me.
So this is going to be a really cool chat today because you've obviously worked through the program. You've done a little bit of hiking recently and had a really, really cool adventure. And I'm really excited to sort of dive into it all and just exploring a few bits and pieces and just hearing a little bit about your journey through all of this. So I think to kick things off, do you just want to let the listeners know where you're from, what you do, and what is your background in hiking?
Okay. Well, I'm Rhonda. I'm currently living in Melbourne. I work in aged care. My hiking background is a bit limited. I was living over in Perth for quite a few years, so I'd started over there. In 2016, I went off and did the Camino over in France and Spain, although I don't really call that a hike. I think that's more of a walk. But leading up to that, I was going out with a couple of friends I had over there and doing a lot of local hikes, just day hikes and, a couple of hikes with my pack just to get used to carrying a pack for long distances. After I got back from that, I just wanted to do more and more walking. And I'm now over in Melbourne. So when I got to Melbourne, I didn't know a lot of people. So I joined a meetup group that did a lot of hiking, a bunch of ladies that did a lot of hiking. So I got more into hiking through them. And I did another Camino. I went and did the Portuguese Camino, but this time I went by myself and came back from that and decided I really actually like doing solo walks. And then this year, last year I thought, I want to go and do the Overland Track, and I thought it's not that long, so I could probably manage to do that by myself without too much drama. So, but I've had a few knee issues and foot issues, so I really needed to work on my fixing those issues so I would be able to complete it without any problems. And that's where I got in touch with Rowan, obviously. So, and then February this year, I headed off and finally did the Overland Track. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with my hiking.
Yeah, awesome. So sort of the plan of attack when we sort of first started working together then was you had the overland in your sights, but you're aware that the knee and the feet, they had some issues in the past and you're wanting to make sure they were feeling okay. Was that about the general gist of it?
Definitely, yeah, because I knew, once you're on a walk like the Overland Track, there's only two ways out. You either walk out or you get evacuated, and I didn't want the second option. I wanted to make sure I was fit enough to be able to complete it without, too much pain or too many issues.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the training that you did in the lead up to this, like through the Summit Strength stuff. Like, what did your program look like as you got into it all?
My program we had like 3 strength sessions, a recovery session. There was hiking, and then there was the loaded pack hiking. I have to admit I was a bit slack some days. With COVID and restrictions and lockdowns and everything, some days it just all got a little bit too much, and I didn't, complete everything I had planned to complete at the start of the program. I thought I would be able to do a lot more than I actually did, but I definitely made sure I tried to do recovery, every day, and just, there were a few daily exercises that, specifically targeted my problem areas that, I would definitely take a couple of minutes to do those specific exercises, even if I didn't manage to complete, a whole strength session or whatever.
And in all of that, was there anything different in there which you hadn't really done before?
Not really. I had done a lot of, before I did, actually after I did my first Camino, I had quite a bad problem with my knee, and I'd actually seen a surgeon who had wanted to operate. I had maltracking of my kneecap, and this surgeon had wanted to fix that. But my physio had said, don't. He said, you need to just build up strength in your legs. So I then sort of joined a gym, and it was a gym that was specifically targeting women over 50 to do strength exercises. So I got involved in that. So a lot of those exercises were similar to what I did through your program, but I had just become slack over the years and not followed on with them. And plus moving, from Perth to Melbourne and just trying to re-establish myself, and life just got in the way. Also, when I had hiked before, I hadn't done a lot of loaded pack hiking. Like, I'd done the odd loaded pack hike, but probably not as much as I should have done to get used to the weight, which I think really helps.
And then from it all, do you think there was maybe a favourite exercise that you had and a least favourite exercise, out of curiosity?
Yeah, like I love calf raises, only because that really helps my foot. So I did a lot of those. My least favourite, probably the one-legged squats onto the chair, like the balance with the one leg. I can't, I found that really hard.
Yeah.
Still finding it really hard.
So what Rhonda is describing there is what's called an eccentric pistol squat, which is what we use through the Summit Strength. There's a progression from the step downs, which I absolutely love. And essentially it involves you standing next to a chair, going on one leg, and then slowly lowering yourself down on one leg, and then standing up from there. And it's definitely a challenging exercise, and it's definitely something that gives a few people a bit of trouble, but yeah, it's a really nice thing to include in there. So good to know about that, Rhonda. Good to know.
It's not nice, Rowan. It's not nice.
Well, it's nice on my front, I'll say. So through the process then, so we worked together for about around about 12 weeks or so. Like, through the process leading into your Overland, were there any roadblocks that did come up along the way? Anything that didn't go, quite as smoothly, or anything that got away of the process and in the way of the process? And if so, how did you go about overcoming them?
Well, obviously work kept getting in my way, and lockdown sort of, being in Melbourne, we were in and out of lockdown and being restricted to 5 kilometres for any exercise. Where I live, it's flat as there's one tiny little hill, and so it was really hard for me to get any hill training in. I had to wait until our restrictions were lifted so I could go beyond where I live to find a decent hill to train on. So that was probably my biggest issue, was the hill training. There was just nowhere in my zone, and it was all, obviously because of COVID and our lockdowns. That was my biggest roadblock.
So how did you go about training around that or overcoming that?
Well, I went to the one little hill I have that's, I don't even think it's barely 100 metres up. I think it's so small, but they call it the 100 steps. It's in Altona. I don't think it's got 100 steps. I haven't actually counted them, but that was my only place I would go to, and I would just do laps up and down there. That was the only place I could go to overcome my lack of hills, but it was pretty boring.
Yeah. And then you said as well that, like, obviously work for you was a big factor, and there was a lot going on in your work. Like, what were the types of things you did to help adapt around, when you had a really busy week of work or when you were low on energy, and what types of things did you try to sort of fit your training around that?
I just tried to get out for a walk because I find just mentally walking really helps me. And work was very stressful most of last year for us working in aged care, and just the constant having to wear masks and shields, and you just wanted to get out and have that fresh air on your face. But even then you still had to wear a mask here if you're in the local area. It was just, getting out for short daily walks was probably the thing that saved me. There wasn't much else we could do. It's just one of those years that we hope doesn't repeat.
Yeah, I think we're all thinking that. Everyone in the world, more or less. So let's talk about the trail then. So you did your preparation, you did your training, you said goodbye to work. You flew over to Tassie, stepped on the trail. How did it all go? Talk me through it.
It was great. The first couple of days I had, not brilliant sunshine, but had mostly clear skies. I had big plans. I was, before I set off, I had planned on, going to Cradle Mountain Summit and Mount Osler Summit and Barn Bluff. I wanted to do them all, but in reality that didn't happen. I did manage to get to Cradle Mountain Summit, and I was way out of my comfort zone. I love rock scrambling, but those rocks were a bit bigger than rocks that I've scrambled up before, and I've only got short legs, and I was really struggling. And plus, being on my own, I knew there were people up ahead of me on the trail, and there had been people behind me, but I think they must have turned around because I never saw them again. And there are a couple of places where I lost sight of the markers because the rocks were just too high and I couldn't actually see where I was going. And I thought I'd take what looked to be an easier route, only to find that that was definitely not the right way to go, and then had to come back down and then look back up to try and find the markers again to head back up on the right trail. And I got towards the end of like the last little climb up to the summit, and I was just stuck. I couldn't get up onto this ledge. It was just beyond me. And I didn't want to turn around, but I physically couldn't get up there. And fortunately, two young guys came along and they said, "Oh, you can't turn around now. We'll get you." And they've just grabbed me and pulled me up this rock. And so I managed to get up to the summit, which was fantastic, except there was no view because by that time we're in cloud. So all I saw was cloud up there. But it was beautiful, though, because there was absolutely no wind and it was really still. So it was quite magical, even though you couldn't see anything. Then my worry was, how was I going to get back down over that bit? I struggled to get up, but it wasn't too bad. I just laid down on my stomach and lowered myself over the edge until I felt my foot touch something. So that was a lot easier. I really had no idea that I still had quite a bit of walking to do that day, and that climb did really take it out of me, but managed to get to Waterfall Valley Hut, which was an absolutely beautiful hut. And, I think there was only two of us that were staying, that were doing the overland, had actually made the summit that day. A lot of the others had actually had to turn around, but I did have a bit of an advantage because I'd stayed at Wild Time Cabins the night before, so I managed to get an earlier start than most of the others. So I think because they had the later start, they just ran out of time to get up there, and plus the clouds had come in, so it wasn't really worth going. That sort of made it a really long day. The rangers then informed us that there was a really big storm coming in the next couple of days, and they're expecting, rainfall in excess of 100 mils. So that wasn't something to look forward to. So we decided the next day we would skip the next hut and go on to Pelion, which made it a really, I think that ended up being about 23 kilometres. So then I've had two really big days right at the start, so it wasn't a really good idea. But we had got to, I think, what's the next? Windermere. We'd got to Windermere by 10:30 in the morning, so it had only taken us 2.5 hours. So it really, we thought while the weather's good, we would keep walking and make the most of the good weather, which was good, but it just made for a very long day. Then from Pelion, I wanted to do, Mount Ossa was the next day, and I really wanted to get up to the summit there. So we've headed out. We've got to the point where you drop your packs to go up the mountains, and there were some people that had already gone up. Most of the people that were around the area when I was there had decided they weren't going up. It was looking like it was about to rain, and I crossed my fingers and I thought, no, I'm here. I'm going to have a crack at it. So off I went, and the higher I got, the wetter I was getting. And I got up to a section they call the Japanese Gardens, and all I could see was swirling clouds, and it was just starting to rain, and I was completely by myself. I knew once again there were a couple of people up ahead of me, but I had no idea how far ahead, and I didn't know if there was anyone coming up behind me. So I thought, just for safety, I was better off turning around and going back down, because I really couldn't see anything at that stage. I passed going back down, though, I passed a guided group heading up, and I sort of thought, I could tag along with them. And it did go through my mind that if they're heading up there, they must know that the weather's going to clear, because surely they wouldn't take a group of people up there if the weather was going to be really bad. But I think by then I was just too exhausted, and so I thought, no, I'm better off just heading back. So I've headed down, and surely, about half an hour later, the skies cleared and it was a beautiful, clear afternoon, but oh well, it was what it was. So I missed out on that. Then we met up another ranger at Kiora Hut, came along, and she once again informed us that, there's this really big storm coming through the next day. So the next morning everyone was rushing to get out of the hut early to try and, get to the next hut before this storm hit. That day there's a lot of water. There's like 3 waterfalls you can visit. I skipped the first 2 in favour for the bigger one because I thought, well, that'll save a little bit of time and that way hopefully I won't get too wet. So I just went for the bigger one. That was absolutely beautiful. Headed off again, and it was starting to drizzle with rain, and I was heading down the side of this hill and it was getting heavier and heavier, and I just flew. I just thought, I don't want to get wet. So I flew down the side of this hill, and I was first at the hut, and I think about half an hour later it just absolutely torrential downpour, and we had torrential downpour all that afternoon, all through the night. There was thunder and lightning, and I think the hut was completely full, and it's probably one of the biggest huts, the Bert Nichols huts. It's massive, but there were people sleeping on the kitchen floor and everywhere. Only 2 couples put their tents up. One ended up coming back inside by about 10:30 at night. Only one stayed out there for the entire night. The next morning, the sun was out again, so we knew there was still more rain coming. So once again, everyone was out and on the trail again early to try and, get as much ground covered before the rain came through. We just had slight drizzle on and off throughout the day. It wasn't too bad. I didn't even put my wet weather gear on. It wasn't that bad, but the trail was incredibly wet and muddy, and a lot more slippery than it had been. So that was a good day. I think that was to Narcissus Hut. Most of the people, there were a lot of people then catching the ferry from there, but I had already made up my mind I was going to walk the entire trail to the end. I wasn't going to catch the ferry, so no one else was coming with me that day, so I was off again on my own. Echo Point Hut has a reputation for having a rat infestation, and I got to the hut and it had been drizzling with rain the whole day. That day I actually had put my wet weather gear on. That part of the trail was even muddier than it had been previously. I fell over a couple of times. I felt like a turtle. I fell on my side at one stage and I had my pack and I was really had to struggle to get back up. And I got to the hut and the wind coming across the lake was really icy. And just the thought of spending the night there by myself with rats didn't appeal to me. I had envisioned this, camping on the beach, waking up to this amazing sunrise that everyone talks about, but looking at the sky, I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I think I'd got there about 11 o'clock in the morning and I just decided, no, bugger it, I'll just keep walking to the end. I'd managed to get a little bit of phone reception there and managed to find that there was accommodation available at Lake St Clair if I got there that night. So I booked myself a nice little cabin and off I walked again. And, I finished that up. I finished a day earlier than I had planned. But, the thought of sleeping in the rat hut by myself didn't really appeal to me. I think if the weather had been a lot nicer, I would have stuck it out, but it was just so miserable and cold, and I was on my own, so I thought, no, I'm going to keep going. So, yeah, that was my trail. It was, yeah, absolutely beautiful, though, just so much variety. Yeah.
It sounds like you went through it all there. That's absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. And throughout all that, like how did the knees and the feet hold up?
Well, they were fantastic. And because I changed my shoes at the last minute, the shoes that I had been planning on wearing, I switched at the last minute, and I found that my orthotics didn't actually fit into them comfortably. Like they weren't comfortable. And I have worn these shoes heaps of times before without any issues, and I thought, bugger it, I'm just going to wear those. And I had no issues with my foot whatsoever, no foot pain. My knees were fine. My knees were a bit tired some days, like especially after the rock scrambling. I think they were more tired than like actually pain. Like, yeah, they weren't painful. It was more of a tired feeling, like the poor little things were just exhausted from all the stepping up. But once I'd rested, they were fine. So it wasn't a lingering sort of pain. And my hips, because I've had issues with my hips in the past as well, but I'm actually finding when I'm hiking and I've got a pack on, it seems to stabilise my hips a lot more, and I have no issues with my hips. So I might have to think about running with a pack maybe to stabilise my hips.
Yeah, awesome. And then thinking back to the trail and thinking back to, everything you went through, was there anything on the trail that you came across which you hadn't really first considered before you'd set off?
Not really, because I watched so many YouTube videos of the Overland Track and people walking it. It's in all different, seasons and weather. So probably the rock scrambling was probably a little bit more than I anticipated. The tree roots were pretty hectic. They were, you've got these enchanted forests that I didn't find very enchanting by the end because the amount of tree roots, and it's hard to really understand how tiring tree roots and rocks are until you're actually doing it, because you're constantly having to focus on where you're putting your foot, and you're not actually enjoying looking around at times because you're so focused on your foot placement, because the roots and the rocks are just so tiring. But apart from that, I was pretty well prepared, I think, after watching hundreds of videos during lockdown.
Yeah, time well spent, hey?
Yeah.
And at the end of the hike then, so once you sort of crossed the finish line, once you took your pack off your back, like how did you feel and what was going through your head, and then how did you celebrate at the end of it all?
I just felt so good that I'd managed to do it, and especially on my own, because it's the first. I mean, even though I've done a Camino by myself, it's so totally different to hiking out in the middle of nowhere where there's no bars or cafes, which I'm used to on the Camino. So I was really sort of pleased that I was able to do that, and because I had booked I'd sort of lashed out and booked a cabin at Lake St Clair, which was absolutely wonderful. Bit overpriced, but the cabin I had like a disabled shower in it, so to be able to sit down in the shower was magical. It was because my feet, although my usual foot problem was fine, I get my second toe on each foot when I do multi-day hikes. I always get blisters under that toenail, And I've tried different shoes. I've tried everything, but I think the way I grip with my toes, it is an issue, but it's not a bad, like I just pop the blister and relieve the pressure and then wrap hiker's wool around it, and it's fine to go. And then eventually the toenails come off. But that was my only big issue. But it was just great to be able to sit down and have this lovely hot shower at the end. That was my celebration.
Fair enough. And I think all of us hikers know, how good that feels at the end of a big trail. So I think that's fair enough. So moving forward then, Overland's, that was a little ways ago now. What's the plan of attack for your hiking moving forward? What's next on the list that you're looking to challenge yourself for?
I really want to go and do more hiking down around Wilson's Prom. I used to go down there as a child and do the overnight hikes, and I haven't been back there since. I want to go and do another Camino. I want to do the Primitivo one, which apparently is one of the hardest but also the most beautiful, because you're going through a lot more mountains. But it's only I think it's only about 300 kilometres, so it's not a very long one, but it's very mountainous. So that's definitely on the list when we can travel again. Also, the Great Ocean Walk is always on the list. There's so many. The Grampians, there's always things. There's always hikes. I just have to make time for them though.
Yeah, that's always the way, isn't it? The list is so long, and it's just finding the time to tick them off, isn't it?
I did have a fantasy about hiking the PCT at one stage, but after doing the Overland Track, I'm not really sure I'm cut out for so many, for months of being out in the wilderness. I think a week's about my limit, because I really miss having a shower.
Yeah, fair. It definitely does take a certain type of personality to be able to deal with the weeks and months on end. So,
but I'd love to be able to do it, but I'm not sure I'm mentally cut out for that one.
Fair enough. And then if anyone listening today was considering, the Overland Track, and they had that in their sights, or they were, leading up to it, or just dreaming about it, what advice could you give them?
Do lots of stair training. And hills, is that even the undulating hills were a little bit more than the average undulating hills. Because I know on the last section of the walk, people kept on saying, the walk to Echo Point, that's really flat, that it's flat around the lake. Well, it wasn't my flat. There was definitely still a few hills there. So, where I live is flat. That's flat. That was not flat. So, stairs, because there's so much stepping up on rocks and tree roots and stuff all the time. So I think stair training would be a big advantage.
Fantastic. Definitely good advice for anyone in a hike like that. As you said, when someone says, it's all flat, typically I'd say don't believe them, because they've done it. They're out of the picture, and you never know what's gonna strike.
Yeah, I mean, my idea of flat and theirs is totally different. But it was definitely not. It was undulating, but definitely not flat.
Yeah, fair. Well, awesome, Rhonda. I think this has been awesome having a chat about this adventure and the lead up, because it's such an amazing thing that you've accomplished, particularly as a solo hiker, and going through all these challenges and pushing through the mental blocks and all of this. And it's been really, really cool chatting about this and hearing a little bit more about it in all detail. Now, before we wrap up the episode today, was there anything else you wanted to add? Anything else we didn't really get a chance to cover, or any other words of advice you could share today?
I think if anyone's thinking about doing a solo hike, they should, I hear a lot of people that want to do it, but they're afraid to do it. But on most of these trails, you're not totally alone. Like, I did spend, hours by myself, but then I would come across other people. So if it's a well-walked trail, you'll probably find that you're never totally alone. So if you need that connection with someone, you'll bump into someone throughout the day, or, at the nights if it's, a hut-to-hut type hike, there's always people at the huts at night. So you shouldn't be too worried about doing it by yourself, because in reality, you're not totally alone. So that's probably my best advice for those that want to have a crack at solo hiking. Pick a trail that, where it is a hut-to-hut hike, and that you won't be totally alone, and see how you go from there.
I love that. And I think that's such an important point to share, and I think that's such a valuable point to share. So I'm so glad that's a perfect way to finish things up. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Rhonda. I think this has been a really, really great episode, and I think this insight that you've shared around this adventure and the lead up and the challenges you faced, I think it's going to be really, really valuable for a lot of people who have the Overland Track in their sights, or maybe looking at their first solo adventure or whatever it may be. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. It really has been fantastic.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rowan. It's just, I think as also working in aged care, it's made me realise you can't wait until it's too late to do these things. You've got to get out now and do them when you can. Don't put off today what you can do tomorrow, as they say.
So there you go, guys. I really do hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gotten a little bit of value about hearing about Rhonda's story leading into this big adventure. Now, if you were interested in learning a little bit more about the preparation program Rhonda used to get prepared for this big solo adventure, you can find the Hiker's Knee Prevention Program at summitstrength.com.au/hikers-knee-program. That's summitstrength.com.au/hikers-knee-program. And I'll leave a link in the show notes below. And this particular program is incredibly relevant for any hiker who does struggle with some type of knee pain on the trail, and they want to make a significant change to that so they can get out and enjoy their adventures to the very best of their abilities. So thanks for so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.